So I'd like to introduce Theo Papatrechas, who is talking to us today about some of his work with extreme climate events and sonification.
Hello, thank you for coming. I would like to thank Dr. Saving for the invitation. And I would like to talk about a few things that I'm interested in and I've done in the past and I'm currently doing. And I'm looking forward to chatting with you afterwards if you have comments and reactions and questions. So through this presentation, we will embark together on a journey where I'll talk about a few things that I've been doing as a composer, as an electronic musician and as a sound artist, and how that found space in scientific research over the years, through laying out some key projects I was involved in through my PhD work and the research appointments that I've held. Coming from Greece and completing my undergraduate studies there, I would be constantly in search, I'm still in search for the next place to continue my endeavors in, new people to connect and collaborate with, and people from, especially people from different disciplines. I'm always fascinated to talk with people with different mindset than mine and have a different take on the arts, on their fields, on life and on the world. And generally join a community that is more interdisciplinary. After my studies in Greece, I spent a year in Finland, continuing my studies, and then I moved to the United States for postgraduate studies. I did my master's there and my PhD in music. So for the past 10 years, I've been residing in California, where I did my PhD at UC San Diego, and I worked there since. Halfway into the PhD program, about 2018, my creative practice was focusing on the coexistence of acoustic and electronic media in immersive artistic scenarios. A key idea was space. What space is the material of my music recorded in? The actual physical space, but also thinking of the inner space of the recorded objects, meaning the instruments or other found objects that I'm using to create sound with. Dealing and experimenting with recordings extensively, different configurations of microphones, different configurations of different recording scenarios. The other idea is what space this material is played into. Different spaces, different speaker configurations. I've played music through stereo, through quadraphonic, octaphonic, up to 34 speakers. Produced installations for that amount of speakers in a complicated system, of course. And the third point is what's the impact of the space on the listener? The purpose is to create the ultimate experience for the listener to engage with the material and really connect with the storytelling of the project, or what is the project suggesting. So in 2018, I was attending different interdisciplinary seminars, and in one of them, I had the chance to meet my very good friend and colleague, Dr. Joshua Jones. At the time, Josh was doing his PhD as a marine acoustician at the Whale Acoustics Laboratory at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. In the context of a seminar that I was attending, Josh came in and presented his research that was about recording deployment sites in the Arctic Ocean, acoustic data acquisition and analysis, with the purpose being to understand the sound of the environment, to understand the changes in the environment through sound, and how human activity and climate change impact underwater life. Through this seminar, Josh was very gracefully gave us the permission to use samples from these recording sites, acoustic data that he had recorded with his team And primarily we were dealing with sounds from the Chakchi Seaside, which is west of Alaska. It's basically open water, so that means the soundscape is active and busy and noisy. So we're dealing with sounds of beluga whales, bowhead whales, bearded seals, and different sea ice dynamics. Another phenomenal circumstance with that seminar is that we had the opportunity to work at this space, the specialization lab at Qualcomm Institute at UC San Diego. The specialization lab is currently equipped with Meyer sound system, consisting of 20 speakers. That are divided on into three rings, 3 levels. We have 8 speakers surrounding the listener, lateral, 6 speakers, the outer top ring around the ceiling, and 4 speakers overhead, and then subwoofer. So basically, we have the possibility to create a 3D experience where the listener is receiving sound from all directions. It's pretty phenomenal space. This is the diagram of the speakers. And through that seminar, I collaborated with a few colleagues from the music department who are performers, instrumentalists, and we decided to do a project together using this data and create something from it. I'm going to play a snippet from this project that is called Pithmenas, which in Greek means the bottom of the ocean. It's a 3D audio installation for 28 channels. So back then the space had 28 speakers. The idea is to artistically replicate the actual underwater sound environment by bringing the sounds of the performance underwater to join the voices in the sea. The performers got the data, experienced them, and tried to replicate them with their own instruments, acoustically. So they reacted to the data, but they also reacted with each other through improvisatory action. At the end, we recorded the layers of the performance, we added the data, and then we created this installation that goes for about 17 minutes. And it was premiered in that space, in the specialization lab. So I'll play about a minute of that. Of course, this is a stereo rendition, right? There's some specialization, but imagine yourself being in that space and then receiving all the sound from around you. The next thing, after that seminar, and after completing my PhD, I got in touch with Joss, and then I was employed by Scripps to join the team and assist with the research to contribute with my expertise. At that point, we were dealing with samples and data from other recording sites in the Eclipse Sound, which is in Nunavut waters. There are two distinct locations that serve as points of recording deployments. The first one is called PI, Pond Inlet, and then the other one is called MI, Milne Inlet. There you go. Milne Inlet is basically a sheltered environment. It's kind of isolated. And then the Pond Inlet basically serves as entrance to that channel from open water going towards the Milne Inlet. The purpose of the research was, well, there are many objectives. One of them is that we utilize raw underwater acoustic recordings to create 3D immersive acoustic experiences, replicating the underwater environment. The idea is that the listener becomes the hydrophone. So we place the listener at the spot of the hydrophone in underwater, and then they experience the surrounding acoustic environment. We don't only create an immersive experience, but materialize the results of acoustic research on the impacts of human activity on marine mammals in the Arctic. Translating the underwater sound pressure measurements in water into comparable levels in air for the human hearing system provides an accessible way for the broader community to understand the effects of industrialization that industrialization can have on nature. The research is aimed at facilitating decision-making by community organizations regarding wildlife management and economic development. It's an area that is experiencing rapid change, not only from changing sea ice and climate, but also due to the development of a large-scale industrial mining project in the area. Iron ore is mined and shipped to market that goes through the Inuit waters of Eclipse Sound. So the increase in commercial shipping on marine mammals is of the highest concern. A little bit about the technology. The data is collected through a sophisticated system that is called HARP, High Frequency Acoustic Recording Package. That was developed at Scripps. You can see the instrument that consists of floats, the acoustic sensor, the hydrophone, the sound recorder, batteries, release units, and anchors. So basically how it works is that they throw that in the water, and then it goes down to about 700 meters. It records over the period of a year, right? So they throw it, let's say September, and then they go next September, and then they pick it up, and then it has recorded 1 year. It's pretty fascinating. So where I'm coming in? I'm coming in now, and how can I contribute, right? My personal work and research involves basically two components. The first is technical work, sound design work on the data, isolating the signals, and re-assembling them into 3D soundscapes. And the second is translating the outputs into a web space for public access, which is ongoing. So we developed a methodology how to assemble quantitative soundscape. I'm not going to go into detail, but here's some steps. Basically, we receive the raw samples, right? And then in order to be able to incorporate them into a soundscape, we need to extract from them everything else, right? You can imagine that these environments are very noisy, and we have the equipment as well making noises. So we have electrical acoustic activity that is produced by the instrument itself. We have disc writes. In the past, the instrument was recording every 75 seconds, and then it was taking 10 seconds to store this data, right, while it was recording. So every 75 seconds, there were 10 seconds as complete noise that ideally we would like to remove, get rid of, right? Because it was interfering with signal. Every instrument has a specific acoustic activity, acoustic profile that we also would like to get rid of. There's mechanical activity, basically the hardware interfering with the instrument. So cables hitting the sensor or flow of water basically creates, interferes with the instrument and then creates studs. And the last is ambient sound reduction. So we attenuate the environment, the sound of the environment around the signal of interest to isolate it. I would like to play, just to demonstrate, a sample. It's a Portobelugas, Chakchi C, in 2016 in April. It was recorded. So I'm going to play the raw sample, and then I'm going to play the sample after this process is applied. This is the raw. And this is the after. Moving on, the second step in the process, after isolating the signals, right, our characters, is to recreate the ambient soundscape, because we have removed it, right? So the ambient sound means that is the sound world that exists in the background. And in the ocean, the background sound varies with wind, waves, ice, and the ambient soundscape of every location has a distinct profile that has to do with the formation of the ground. Open versus silted, shallow versus deep water. To reproduce the ambient soundscape, we basically take the data. The data gives us measurements of sound pressure levels and receive levels from water to air, so that the resulting levels are adaptive to the human hearing system. This is a plot from Palm Inlet in the month of August 2019. This is the 50th percentile, and this is the 99th percentile of sound pressure measurement in that month. In order to replicate that plot, basically, we take white noise. So we reproduce it synthetically. We take white noise, and then we apply this plot into the white noise. So we basically filter the white noise based on the plot. Now, ambient sound is coming from all directions, right? So we basically identified 3 rings. We're still working at this specialization lab, right? So we had the opportunity to actually replicate a 3D representation of it. 3 rings. The first ring translates the long range of ambient environment sound. It's the ring that carries the spectral identity of that specific location. So here you see to the left, you basically, this is the hydrophone, this is the listener, right? And we're looking from the bottom down. So these sources basically produce the first ring of the ambient sound that surrounds the listener. The second ring of sources is the mid-range surface sounds, primarily winds and waves. They're coming from above. And then the third ring, close-range surface sounds located overhead. So in this demonstration, I'm playing the 50th percentile, the levels from that month. So this is the sound I got. And imagine that this is a quiet day in August 2019. Moving on, the third step is placing the characters. So we isolated the characters, right? We have them as samples. We recreated the ambient soundscape, and now we have to place the characters into the environment again. One of the characters is a bowhead whale. A bowhead whale, bowheads travel in pods and use sound to navigate and communicate through hundreds of miles away. They produce these songs, and we call them songs because they carry all the characteristics of a song. They have motives, they have phrases, they have structure. Here's a sample of a bowhead whale, a segment of a song that I extracted. Fascinating. You clearly see a phrase here. There's an intro, and then it does this elaborate thing, and then closes, right? It's like an arts form. This is music.
Did you put the background in?
Yeah, the background is in. That was a raw sample. So in this map, basically we're facing west, right? And then behind us, the pond inlet. This is the migration path of bowhead whales, about 15 kilometers east of the PI. This is the path they travel, going to Europe. Second character is a narwhal. They also travel in packs and they produce sound to navigate and find food. And they produce these echolocation clicks. Pretty fascinating. So narwhals, they do these long dives, about 15 minutes, so from the surface to the bottom to find food. And that spectrogram gives you 2 hours of activity, and you see these patterns, right? These are the dives. And this is a single dive, the narwhal up the surface, coming closer to the hydrophone, right? So the signal is stronger, and going back to the surface over 12 minutes. Now, the sound of the narwhal, that click, is very thin. The texture is very light. So the approach we took for that is to, because it's really hard to isolate, we thought to replicate it synthetically. So we analyzed it. We heard that. We analyzed it, and this is the synthesized version without any background. And the last character is the ship. A bulk carrier ship, 323 meters long, travels from the Baffin Bay all the way to Europe. Initial location is going to be 30 kilometers away, coming towards us, right? Traveling 30 kilometers away from us. Normally it takes about 4 hours. So we can hear the ship from the hydrophone. We can hear the signal being 2 hours away or 3 hours away. So we created a demonstration that goes for, it's an accelerated pace. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but basically we have the environment now. We have the ambient sound, we have the bowhead whale, which is going to be the blue dot. We have the narwhals, which is the white dot, and then the ship will come and basically cover the environment. Shipping sound. This is a signal of a bowhead whale, 15 kilometers away. Narwhals about 500 meters away. And then the ship is coming. And again, we replicated that in that space. So that was overwhelming. That was the first part of this presentation. If I can have a few more minutes, I can talk about this other project. Yeah. Or if you have questions, maybe okay. We do questions at the end. Yeah? Yeah. So after that project, we actually did a similar presentation at that space, and then that eventually got me that postdoctoral appointment at Qualcomm Institute in San Diego, the California Institute for Telecommunications and Information Technology, QUT. At Qualcomm Institute, there is a research group that is called Alert California. Alert California is a public safety program working to understand wildfires and other natural hazards and determine short and long-term impacts on people and the environment. It has about 1,000 cameras across California, collects data daily, 24/7, and basically supports data-driven decisions to prepare for, respond to, and recover from natural disasters. So we're dealing with fire. I would like to focus on one project that I worked on, and it's basically I did a sonification of a prescribed fire that happened in New Jersey in 2019, and basically by the Forest Service, Forest Fire Service, and the National Institute for Standards and Technology. They were there to capture it. They specialize in fire research, so they did image and acoustic data acquisition of that event. So basically, they had a 360 camera in the middle of this event. The camera is inside a dome filled with water, and then there's a pump buried in the ground that basically circulates the water so that the camera doesn't explode. They also had acoustic sensors, microphones, really inexpensive microphones, buried to the left and right of the camera, and they were basically covered with fabric and screen so that they don't, again, explode. So we got some acoustic data for that. But as you can imagine, again, there's a lot of noise from the pump, from the fire, and the sensors weren't able to capture exactly the rich, let's say, profile or activity of the event. So my job was to replicate synthetically and artistically, there's an artistic component to that, based on what I got from that acoustic data. This is the original sample I got. As you see, all these lines basically is the profile signal of the pump. So the pump is really prominent in this sample. It's about 45 minutes, right? So my job was to analyze that, identify some key sections, and get the sound pressure levels for those sections and replicate them synthetically. And the camera is 360, so the video is 360. So the second component of my work is to map the sound with the image. So when you navigate yourself around the camera, sound moves as well. So I would just like to play the outcome. terrifying, huh? So in the lab we had a quadraphonic array, and then we had a spot in the middle where the spectator can experience that, and sound is coming from 4 directions. That was my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Was that wind synthesized?
Wind synthesized, yeah. And fire synthesized. Everything was synthesized.
Actually, I should just adjust the mics so we can record the questions as well. Would you guys want to say something down there and we'll see if Jane can hear us?
Oops.
Jane, can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, I'm here. Just realised I very rudely didn't switch off my mic. I've heard all the way through.
Okay,
I loved that. That was amazing.
Get too much feedback.
Oh.
I'll turn this up. So, see how we go. What did you say, Jane?
I was just saying that was absolutely inspiring. It had my heart at listening to the Arctic, and the idea of capturing like the actual literal voice of the more than human, and then recreating it so that you can move through it. Just a delight. I've been following you along on your website because I'm quite distanced from the PowerPoint, and it's just awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that was great. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, Theo, I found your talk absolutely fascinating, and I think it's really important to record and capture the voices of these creatures. And I'm wondering how your work might inform further attempts to understand perhaps how they're communicating with each other. You talked about music, but I'm also thinking about language. And have you had approaches from other researchers attempting or wanting to understand, in fact, what they're saying?
It's an ongoing thing. Like people focus on that, and for years and years, they try to understand what are these songs.
Yeah.
You know, the reason why, what they're trying to say, and how far they communicate.
Yeah.
You know, I've talked to scientists like marine acousticians, Joss as well, and his seniors, and they say that they believe that they basically trying to reach each other from 100 kilometers away or 200 kilometers away, and their patterns, because sound travels faster in water than air, but what happens is that it changes while it's traveling. So in a way, they think that they predict, the animals predict how these songs are going to change throughout that distance.
Yeah.
So what the other animal, the other ant will receive, and how it's going to process it, right? But yeah, people deal with that aspect, trying to understand and trying to understand how they communicate, but how they listen, right?
Yeah.
That's another thing. I guess through my work, what I'm trying to do is I would like to create these experiences so that people can experience what we don't have access to. Like, we don't have access to that environment. We cannot experience it,
Yeah.
And through that experience, and with scientists talking about that, and me talking about that, they become aware of this is what it is, and this is what happens over time, like how things change and what these, like the industrialization of the ships do to these animals, because what data shows is that, especially that region, 2016 and onwards, or maybe 2012, sorry, there's been less ice. So basically they take advantage of that to increase the traffic, right? So they said, okay, we have less ice, so the path is more accessible. So we'll bring more ships, we'll make this mine, and then we'll take advantage of it. But that has impacts on the life, on the environment, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating for me as well, because, you know, in the past, in my creative practice, I was focusing just making sounds, but that has another dimension that is more important, right? And so I'm really grateful that through my work, I can pass that message.
So that's also, I mean, it can be a form of observation, right?
Yeah.
So when you were showing that the narwhals and the bowhead whale and the ship, that approach, and it seemed as though the narwhal was leading as the ship approached. Was that, did you recreate a scenario that you had observed, or where was that choreography from?
Well,
was that informed by experience, or was it a recreation of a scenario that you previously recorded?
It's a realistic scenario based on information and based with data sources. Because nowadays more and more animals are tagged. So we see where they are, we see what they're doing. And we know that migration path they've observed, and for the bowhead whale, they know they travel that way.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that the bowhead whale are gonna be there, right, at that particular time of the year. And the narwhals, we can hear narwhals around the hydrophone. So we can calculate the distance based on the sound, calculate the distance of the animals from the hydrophone. So we can tell that the narwhal is like 500 meters away, and also, you know, sound propagation, et cetera, the environment, how it's formed. But it's a likely scenario, and we know the transit.
And the research has been done in terms of positioning that as a cause and effect scenario, that the ship causes the wildlife to disperse.
Yes.
And is this part of the evidence towards that? Is that one of the things that you're doing here, or is that?
It's a step. It's a lengthy process, and I've been working there for a year, and we had some, you know, results, but I'm still in contact with them, and we try to, you know, proceed with the research. And also, as I was saying, the second part of my job is to put these sounds online for people to access and give some awareness.
I want to ask you about the awareness piece.
Yeah.
What's your strategy now to, what you're doing in essence is amplifying those voices that are difficult for us to hear. But if we wouldn't be coming to your presentation, we wouldn't necessarily know that you've been doing this work. Like, what's your next amplification now within the human ecosystem, like to connect to political advocacy, to actually bring about change? Like, you know, on social media, Greenpeace is running ads right now about deep sea mining, and they're using quite a cute little animation with an octopus that you might have seen.
Right, yeah.
It's everywhere on Facebook. So there's one of these deep sea mining, you know, excavators on the bottom of the ocean, and the octopus is escaping. If they had access to your work, it would be perhaps even, you know, more powerful, because this is based on empirical, real data, and this was just one ship. Whereas if they were to actually be deep down, not on the surface, and using really big machinery to dig up the ocean ground, I would imagine, and using explosives, that the noise pollution would be tremendously higher than a ship going past.
Well,
do you have aspirations to get politically active around this? Because, you know.
Oh, I am. I was part of the team, right? And then there's an ongoing work on the end of that team to do that, like to take that initiative. And they work with an organization up in Canada called Oceans North that is, advocates for that. Like they're going to go to meetings of Inuit community, talking with politicians about these topics, and that they discuss. They don't have positive outcomes ever, but they try, because there's the economic component, I guess. But I would like to be involved, and now being away from it, I guess I would love to be in a space that I can contribute more, because I think it's essential. So I'm trying to be in contact with them, and now I'm away, but continue that. But definitely, I think it's my duty as an artist and as a person who was privileged to be involved in this, and I need to do that. I think I have to do it, having experienced that research and what's the outcome. Definitely, it's ongoing.
I got to run, but I'll follow up
Yeah.
with you because
Yeah.
this is going to happen in Australia. There's plans for deep sea mining to occur between
Right.
the continent and Tasmania. And whilst I think it's a little bit on hold, it's still on the cards. It's just
Yeah.
critical minerals are needed for the
Right.
economy, but sometimes they are found in odd places, and so it's definitely something that is a risk here as
100%.
well, not just in Canada.
100%. It's everywhere. Yeah, totally. There are hundreds deployment sites for that purpose, to understand the data.
And you're in Brisbane now for a longer period of time?
I'm permanent now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm here now.
We should come to our meetings more often, because I think it would be really good to keep talking around this.
Definitely.
And also,
I would love to.
maybe to introduce Theo to the music people.
Yeah,
Because we don't have
yeah.
anyone.
No.
I'll definitely come by and
Sorry
continue.
to rush off.
But no worries. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcus.
I have another question, actually a couple more.
Yeah.
You talk about characters.
Yes.
The bowhead and the narwhal characters in the ship. Is that you, or where does that come from?
Oh, interesting. When I was developing that, I think Josh brought up the term vignette.
Oh, yeah.
This is the bowhead vignette. This is the narwhal vignette. But then, it's about, if you look at it from distance, it's about storytelling. Yeah. Right? It's about music. It's about the environment. It's about us. So we're all characters in this story, and I feel that I don't know, it was my artistic side, but this is the time that we gave.
Well, it's nice because one of the issues that we have is anthropomorphizing, right?
Right.
So, and this is, but this treats it's not an it, but it's an agent still. So instead of just saying it.
Yes.
So I thought that was really.
So you give it more substance in a way, like importance.
It has it's a way of handling an entity.
Yes.
Not necessarily calling it an entity.
So, Jen?
So I was wondering as well around that, because storytelling isn't the only approach.
Interesting.
Yeah. I have one more.
I hadn't thought about that, but thanks for bringing it up.
Well, another one is also about practice, creative
Yeah.
practice for you is when you had that composition where you layered the recording on top of the performance.
Yes.
Where those performers were working to respond to the recording, was that impromptu? Was that like a, like a jazz improvisation, or was that choreographed, was it rehearsed? What was that like? Were they responding?
Yeah.
So just in terms of that creative practice,
Yes.
I'm wondering where are all the places that you're working with?
Originally, we got the samples, right? And then initially, I was kind of leading this thing, and everybody was contributing, right? But my initial idea was that, okay, we have a list of samples, and let's distribute those to each one of them individually, different samples, different characters. And then they individually experience them and try to imitate them on their own, right? So let's say the flutist got the bearded seal sound. So on their own, in their own practice, they would try to come up with something to do to respond to that, right? Without me being aware, or the other players. So they come together and they start to improvise based on the material that they have generated. And then while they were playing, I gave some instructions about how to structure this thing, this 17-minute piece. So it was their piece, like I wasn't the composer necessarily, right? They were building the piece, I was building the piece, and then I put this whole thing together at the end, choreographing it in space, etc. Yeah. It's very stimulating experience.
Well, John Cage is what I was saying, so I don't necessarily agree that you weren't composing.
Oh, okay.
But I would say that you're co-composing.
I was co-composing, yeah, definitely. I don't consider myself the composer in this project.
No.
I was a contributor, and taking care of the mix of this whole thing. Yeah, John Cage, yeah.
Thanks very much, Theo.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity to share this.